Welcome to the Process Industry Informer podcast, where process professionals can learn and share ideas and information.
Welcome to the Kahuna Workforce Solutions podcast. I'm your host, David Howell. Kahuna gives organizations real-time visibility into the capabilities of their workforce to support operational decision-making. This enables them to assign more work accurately, accelerate onboarding, and upskill more quickly. This improves the flexibility, efficiency, and safety of their workforces and the quality of their products. Well, today, I'm delighted to be joined by Shawn Dagley, the Director of Manufacturing. Welcome, Shawn.
Hey, thank you very much, David. I'm very excited to be with you here today. As you said, my name is Shawn Dagley. I'm Director of Go-to-Market for Manufacturing for Kahuna. Kahuna actually goes to market in 3 different industries. We go in healthcare, energy, and manufacturing. And I'm in charge of our manufacturing vertical. That is really based on 35 years of experience in the manufacturing software space. The first 25 of it was with Siemens, where I helped Siemens work with some of the largest corporations in the world in order to help them improve their product development and manufacturing capabilities, and then spent some time with Pegasystems and Visagi in the space of business process automation, and have recently come over here to Kahuna and very excited to talk to companies about how Kahuna can help their skills management challenges specifically in the manufacturing space.
Well, thanks for that, Shawn. I think it'd be useful, to define that for our audience. We talk about sort of skills-based practices, particularly manufacturing, because that's the focus today. Could you define that for us? We're talking about skill-based practices within, the envelope of workforce solutions and management. But for you guys, what do skills-based practices really mean for, the end user? Could you just kind of define that for me?
Yeah, so first off, we are seeing the need for skills-based practices and principles in every organization, in every industry. But today we're going to speak specifically about manufacturing. And really from a manufacturing perspective, we're seeing the main drivers come from 4 distinct business challenges. The first is worker attainment. So as all of you guys know, the job market is very tight right now. There is a severe shortage of manufacturing expertise available in the market space. And companies really need to have a good onboarding and training program in place in order to open the aperture for hiring. They don't have to hire the person with the perfect skills. They just want to hire the perfect person and have a good skills management practice in place in order to help identify the skills needed and validate compliance with these skills. The next is worker attainment. So employee satisfaction leads to really lower attrition rates. Data shows that the average tenure for a manufacturing employee has fallen from 20 years in 2019 down to 3 in 2023. This is an astounding drop in tenure. By having a good skills management practice, you can facilitate employee development. When employees feel they have a stake in their careers at their company, they're going to stay with that company.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about really how skills-based practices sort of fit into manufacturing. Now, of course, manufacturing itself, you have a background, which I don't need to speak to. Huge changes which have taken place over maybe the last 2 decades, but it seems to me that's massively accelerated. I'm talking about Industry 4, I'm talking about smart factory, etc. These kinds of developments. Of course, now we're talking about AI and how that impacts on manufacturing. And of course, all of that has a foundation of skills, doesn't it? And I'm wondering, from your point of view, Shawn, when you're talking to your customer base, what does that actually mean for them? If they can put these kinds of systems in place, is it absolutely transformative for them? Because it seems to me, if you do these kinds of systems correctly, it can be absolutely transformative.
That's a great question. And in reality, that is a huge challenge within manufacturing organizations today. They are investing a ton of money into Industry 4.0 technologies. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Things like connected equipment and additive manufacturing and virtual and augmented reality, predictive maintenance and AI. But what the problem is companies are forgetting to invest in their workforce in order to maximize the investment in that equipment. I was actually with an executive from an automotive OEM recently, and she said she was in an event where her organization was presenting their factory of the future. And she asked them, this is all great, but what are we doing to ensure our workforce is ready to support these new technologies? guess what? The room fell silent.
Absolutely.
Companies need to identify the new skills and commit to upskilling the workforce in order to fill the new roles and processes, in order to really capitalize on the investment they're making in this Industry 4.0 smart factory future.
Now, you're also talking about, I guess the bottom line for businesses, of course, is productivity. What can we do? How can we enhance our businesses themselves? What our strategy looks like? And of course, people are, as you said, they're often sidelined. The focus for a lot of businesses, and particularly manufacturers who are trying to transform, is, you're right, it's looking at how can we put new systems in place, maybe reduce complexity. What does our process look like? And people seem to be, a kind of afterthought, which seems to be crazy, but it happens all the time. Do you often find that if you pay more attention to how you are managing workforce, that absolutely will influence your bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, there's two key components to what skills management can do for an organization. One is to really improve their overall equipment efficiency and also give them much more flexibility in their workforce. So what do I mean by that? When it comes to operational efficiency, we really make sure that we ensure that the workforce is trained, assessed, and validated to perform their jobs. And this is done at a very granular level to make sure that they can do the job that has been assigned to them. This really helps to improve the performance, the safety, and the quality of their products by having that deep skills-based practice in place. And the next is flexibility. So by having a complete view of the granular skills of your workforce, you can identify skills gaps and potential upskilling or cross-skilling opportunities to ensure that you have the appropriate coverage to address staffing and capacity surprises that may arise on the shop floor. You can quickly identify the needed skills and assign the individuals that have the skills needed in order to address these surprises. And you obviously know what I'm talking about with surprises. It's somebody doesn't show up for work one day. It's a line is not working correctly, or the fact that you have a real deep customer demand, which forces you to increase the capacity that you're producing. Having this flexible workforce allows you to assign the right resources to take care of those challenges.
I think so. I think using the word resource is absolutely key in this conversation. And I'd say that to all manufacturers. It's really that your workforce is an absolute key resource. And maybe you're not doing what you could with that. And that could be from a management point of view. It could be skills. It could be really the whole gamut of that. Everything from, well, let's look at the skills that we do have. What are we missing? And what can we do about that? But more importantly, if there's a huge skill shortage, and obviously there is, and that's chronic, can we make more of what we actually have? I mean, do you find that as well, Shawn, that a lot of the people that you're helping, they say, well, we understand there's a skill shortage, but there are issues there. We need to focus on what we have. And can we do more with the people that we do have? Is that often a conversation you're having these days, just to try and do more with what you have?
Yeah, and there's a lot of strategies that Kahuna can help facilitate in order to do that. Obviously, having real visibility to skills gaps and demand of skills needed in order to do specific tasks. But we're actually talking to a lot of companies that are looking at it from a different angle, and that is adopting pay for skills capabilities. And this is actually tying compensation to skills. So what they're doing is they're offering an hourly pay bump or a gift card, or even to the point of gamification, where they're actually compensating people in order to upskill or reskill in a specific space. This is a really good investment in your people and really get that return on investment by having that higher flexible workforce where you can move people around. And employee satisfaction to make sure that you're really limiting those attrition potentials.
Yes, I think so. I think paying attention to your workforce and I guess the pressure points, isn't it, really? It's really talking to every single individual and asking them that question. How can we make your job easier, more efficient? Can we remove some of the maybe stress that's in place? And that absolutely then, it leads to absolutely less attrition. It leads to, I think, more loyalty and ultimately more efficiency, because happy workforce is a productive workforce after all, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, I wanted to move on a little bit and talk about, I guess, the mechanics of this. I mean, Kahuna has, I guess, a number of things that they can help businesses with. So we're focusing on the manufacturing space. If you are looking at skills management, and that's quite a broad term, I would imagine most businesses have something in place that they try and manage their workforce with. Can you give us an idea of, I guess, where most businesses are at the moment that you speak to when they call you and say, "We need some help, Shawn, what can you do for us?" And then really how you then move them to a more efficient system or a more efficient platform or even an ecosystem which helps them with that. So where are they now and where can you guys move them to?
So first off, David, I'll ask you a question.
Sure. Go for it.
What is the number one business application in the world today?
Well, if we're talking about moving sort of data around and if we're talking about, I guess, just logging information, that's going to be a spreadsheet.
You're 100% correct. So today, I would say almost every person that we're engaged with is using Excel to try and track their skills today.
Absolutely. Sure.
And it's just not working. Don't get me wrong, I love Excel. I mean, I'm an Excel expert. I use it for everything. And it has a role in almost any environment. But companies are running into the usual limitations of trying to use Excel as a business application to do skills management. There's a couple key things. There's a couple key limiters. And once again, I think everybody knows this because they've seen this in Excel, right?
Absolutely.
One is limited scalability. So once you get beyond a small number of skills and a large number of employees, it just becomes unmanageable. You can't manage 100 employees in Excel managing 50 granular skills, right? It's just not feasible. The next is data integrity issues. You're one fat finger away from disaster. Somebody puts a check in the wrong spot and you've got a total problem with your spreadsheet. And the last is limited collaboration capabilities. So shared Excel files lead to the dreaded version control.
Oh, yeah.
He who's last is in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then don't even get me started with, it doesn't have really deep analytic functions and it has limited integrations. It doesn't have the ability to tie into other enterprise business solutions in order to drive deep value.
Absolutely. Now, really, the solution that you guys have is your measurement platform. Can you give us a sort of top-level view of, I guess, how that moves Excel on? I would imagine it is literally light years away from using an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, it is. And first off, let's go to the integration level. With our application, we not only digitize the skills matrix or the skills environment, but we actually integrate and are able to pull and transfer data to other enterprise business systems. We can tie into your HRIS system like Workday or SuccessFactors or Infor and allow you to bring that enterprise data into Kahuna. Things like job descriptions, job codes, organizational structures, those types of things we can read in. And from an LMS system, so you've got an LMS system like a Saba or Cornerstone or Workday Learning or LinkedIn Learning, what we can do is we can integrate with them in order to facilitate the launching of those training classes, but also bringing that data back with certifications in order to make sure that we're marking those skills, validated skills inside of our system. And then there's other manufacturing enterprise systems like MES systems and ERP systems. We can actually integrate with those systems in order to bring back information like time on machine or lockout tagout or just other manufacturing operational information that you want to tie into and with Kahuna. And then lastly, everybody has Power BI and they have Tableau. We have the ability to tie in with those systems so that you can generate reports. Now, we have our own reporting system, which is Insights, which we have structured to give you the needed information that most companies have in order to drive a good skills management practice. But you might want to export some of this information so that you can bring it into some of your other business reports. So the integration is really a big piece that goes beyond Excel and makes it so that we're not digitizing the skills matrix, but we're actually tying that rich information in order to create the visibility both upstream and downstream.
Yeah, and that's absolutely vital, isn't it, to have that visibility right across, and then you make strategic decisions based on the information, the data that you then suddenly have available, which is extremely powerful. I would like to ask you, I guess that's the bird's eye view. Could you outline, I guess, how that would work from individual team members' point of view? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will say, yeah, okay, we can manage workforce or timesheets or whatever at a top level. But what we really want to do is look at individuals. How can we help him or her just to be better? Remove stress, as we've said, remove whatever barriers to make that person a happier worker, a more efficient worker. So if we look at, I guess, the systems that you have on an individual or granular level, could you give us an idea of how that impacts on individual management?
Yeah, one of the things we really focus on, obviously, are operational skills. Now, operational skills are those validated, certifiable skills that a person needs to go through in order to be accredited with a specific skill. And we really look at that really from 3 different levels of assessment. And we really facilitate and manage the authenticity of these assessments. So the first is, and we talked about it a second ago, is the learning assessment.
Yeah.
So this is done through either formal training, whether it be online or in a classroom. And what we can do is, as I said, we can integrate with your learning management system to facilitate the launching of those trainings and the receiving certificates in order to validate successful completion of those classes. So that's first. The second is an observational assessment, and this is really big in manufacturing. So this is done by an assessor who observes the worker perform a task. And this can be driven from a work instruction, a video, or a standard operating procedure. And they would work through these procedures with an assessor who will actually watch them do these tasks. They might even quiz them or judge them through a checklist in order to validate that they can do this task. And we can also tie assets like videos or pictures or notes that can be added in order to have proof of validation. So when you're doing these ISO audits or compliance audits, you actually have proof points that says he was able to do this or she was able to do this.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And then lastly is we call it an experiential assessment. And this is tying into those enterprise systems like MES or ERP or your project management solutions. And we can capture the data in order to do time on machine or number of projects or output metrics to meet requirements that will actually track these experiences and validate the worker at this level.
I'm with you, yes. And that kind of feeds into my next question, which is really about, workforce capabilities. We've talked right at the top of this conversation that skill shortage, how can you make more of the workers that you do have? So it seems to me that if you're looking at the capabilities of your workforce, that's absolutely vital. But are you hearing that that's often, I don't want to say overlooked, but it's not front of mind for a lot of businesses. Whereas if you can put in place a solution like yours, for instance, that opens opportunities, it seems to me, that you can then look at your workforce as, I really hate calling them an asset, but as an essential part of your manufacturing business, and then move that forward. That level of capability suddenly increases, it seems to me.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with you calling people an asset because they're a very valuable piece of the organization. All of the stuff I talked about in the last question about what do we do, right, with the assessments. But really what that does is that just creates a rich data set that really paints a picture of your workforce that you can then look at and view from what we call a level of proficiency for each employee. In most cases today, when we look at people's spreadsheets that they're managing skills on today, they're just giving a check. Are they validated or not validated? But when we look at the data, we just talked about these 3 levels of assessment, we can actually apply those to levels of proficiency so that you can start to see the true picture of what your workforce looks like. Somebody who's just in training, somebody might be a novice, somebody might be intermediate, somebody might be a subject matter expert. But what we do is we actually present that information in a Harvey Ball representation so that you can see that next level of expertise in the skills in each one of your employees. And so when you have that visibility, it really allows you to make really strong decisions on who you put on what task or who you put as a mentor or somebody to bring somebody along. And when you look at it from that perspective, we can assign work much more accurately. We can accelerate onboarding because we have a process to bring people to that expert level, and we can upskill more quickly. And really what this allows organizations to do, as we talked about, giving them the flexibility of the workforce, giving them the overall efficiency, the quality of their products, and the safety of their employees. All of this data can inform operational decisions that the executives can use in order to manage those assets.
Yes, and I also think that if you put a system in place like this, yes, it creates lots of data and you can use that for strategic decision making. But it also seems to me, and I don't know if you found this, Shawn, that when you start to look at the proficiency on a granular level, often that will surface maybe inherent skills that simply weren't visible before. I think it happens a lot when, especially manufacturers, start to look at maybe their data sets in more detail. Again, it surfaces insights which they simply didn't have before. Do you often find that when a business moves to a system like this, that I guess the level of skill which is available within their workforce is kind of revealed?
Yeah, the capabilities revealed, but also your gaps are revealed. Some of the real powerful capabilities that we have is in the ability to create development plans. So with this, we can create development plans from two angles. One is if you see a gap in skills, or if you introduce new technology and you want to bring a set of employees to be able to use these new technology, great examples, Industry 4.0, you can create a development plan where it details out the assessments and the classes and the observational components that a employee needs to go through in order to upskill themselves in that area. Development plans are awesome for being able to reskill or upskill people in a different area. But one of the other things that development plans can do is it can fill gaps with an individual employee. So when you have that granular visibility to each individual employee, you might find a couple of them that are lacking in the completion of the skills necessary to do their job. And you can do a development plan against that. So you can say, at this level, you are still deficient in these skills. We need you to focus and put effort into fulfilling the obligation of those skills in order to meet or to retain the level that you're at.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful, weapon for a manufacturing business who's really wants to leverage their workforces. Can I also ask you to talk a little bit about, I think we have to talk about compliance. I think we have to talk about regulation as well. Because obviously within a workforce, there's lots of all of that stuff which has to be complied with. How does the system actually handle that? Is it absolutely integrated within that? And does that flag instances to the users? How do you actually manage compliance or regulation within the system?
Yeah, that is actually a very large value piece of our technologies, and one of the reasons why a lot of people start looking at a skills management solution is to make sure that they are putting a auditable system in place in order to answer the bell for the compliance needs of the organization. So if you think about some of the key compliance needs, right? Quality, safety, and environmental. What our solution allows you to do is to have a standard set of skills that are required in order to answer and fill the compliance needs for these regulations. One of the interesting things that we do really well is most organizations that we're working with today have multiple plants globally. And a lot of these compliance pieces are things that are a global or a corporate standard. And so what we can do is we can tie these compliance components across all plant locations to make sure that they're meeting the individual compliance needs from a global standpoint. So that's one thing. And the other thing that's very important is most of these compliance classes are time-bound. So you need to take them every year. And once again, that's not January 1st. It's usually a year from their start date or initial certification. What we can do is we can track and present the individual expiration of these certifications in order to make sure that everybody is up to speed on compliance. There's another really cool thing that we can do that organizations take advantage of, which is if you have an escape in one of your compliance goals, say that you had an incident on the floor, say an ammonia leak, when you've got a certification where people need to know what happens on an ammonia leak. If you have an ammonia leak on your floor and it creates a problem, what you could do is say, you know what, I don't ever want this to happen again. I'm actually going to decertify everybody for that class or for that certification. I'm going to make them do it again.
Yeah.
Right? So it will force people to re-educate themselves on the practices and processes to take care of that problem.
I think that's absolutely vital. And I guess what you're really talking about is being proactive, aren't you, Shawn? It's really a case of taking control of that. And how do you do that? Well, you need some practical system in place to allow you to do that very easily with efficiency. And of course, that absolutely meets your specific needs. I'm assuming you guys can absolutely do that depending on what regulation and compliance environment you have to meet.
The key is minimizing risk. I mean, that's what you need to do on the shop floor.
That's ultimately taking that out of the equation. Absolutely. In fact, while we're sort of talking about that, could you give us a sort of practical example? Could you talk about a client, perhaps, maybe not mentioning any names, that really benefited within the manufacturing space? Is there somebody that comes to mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for asking. So we're working with one of the leading industrial tool manufacturers, and they leverage Kahuna to provide full visibility and validation of their skills, certifications, and manufacturing training needs across all 50 of their plants globally. What we do is we're working with them on each plant. So once again, we've created this global structure because there's 50 plants. So we've got the needed integrations. We've got the needed standard corporate certifications. We've got all of the things that are foundational for a plant for this organization. But then we realize that each one of their 50 plants globally have very specific needs. So what we can do is treat them as similar but different. They actually have a global footprint, but each plant is able to handle their own plant-specific needs, whether it's by product line or location or equipment that they have on the floor. Kahuna is managing that complexity at all 50 plants globally. I mean, what they're seeing is that by deploying Kahuna, they can standardize and streamline their skills, data, and processes. They can make critical staffing decisions based on that skills data, and they can deliver more targeted and consistent manufacturing training. Probably the biggest business benefit they had is they boosted employee satisfaction and reduced attrition rates. They have dramatically decreased the attrition rates, mainly in some of their low-cost country plants where the attrition rate was high as people just moved from one plant to another for a couple dollars an hour. And then the other key thing is retaining critical knowledge. We didn't talk about this a lot yet, but the aging workforce is really a big problem in the manufacturing sector. And having a really good skills management practice allows you to capture the knowledge from these years of experience, put that into the training, and really move that knowledge to the next generation. And that's some of the benefits that this company has seen from deploying Kahuna globally.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that what you guys are doing, you talk about skills-aware ecosystem, don't you? You talk about that as, I guess, workforce management in the round, as an environment, as an ecosystem. And I think that's a very good description of what it is. We've talked about how it sort of connects with various systems, HRS, LMS, etc. Could you also, I guess, maybe expand on that a little bit? I think everyone will be very interested and say, okay, Shawn, that's fantastic. We want to do this. I guess what I'd like to sort of close with, Shawn, is, I guess, first steps. It's a case of, yeah, we absolutely understand that we need to do something with our workforce management practices. But how do we begin? And I'm sure you get lots of those calls, Shawn. The first thing is, Shawn, we need some help, but we kind of don't know how to start. I often find that with manufacturers, particularly large manufacturers, with large process, that they can often feel a little bit of paralysis. So where do we start? Where do we begin? How do you sort of answer that question, Shawn? How do you often, I guess, advise businesses to begin in this space?
Well, the first answer, David, is to call Kahuna.
Absolutely.
It's pretty easy. Okay. As you're probably seeing, or the listeners are seeing, we really do take a very educational and consultative approach to selling. This is kind of a new industry. There's a lot of moving parts, and we believe that there's a lot of unknowns. And we think that our experience with our founders starting in this space and building this built-for-purpose solution, that we can really help companies move along on this journey. Like I said, we're doing it from an educational perspective. The first step we do with you is just to sit down and talk to you about your business problems, the challenges you're seeing, and we start to talk about how Kahuna can help in that space. We're really focused on the value of skills management. We've talked a lot about the concepts of the value, flexibility and attrition and operational excellence and efficiency, those types of things. But we really work with the individual organizations to tie the value specifically to their unique business needs. From there, we look at skills management as a business process, and we actually have a well-defined 4-step business process in order to help organizations move forward in this journey. It is curate, assess, assign, and develop. And we can help each organization work through those steps in order to define the foundations of what skills management can do for their organization.
Well, we've come to the end of this. What I'm sure you'll agree was a fascinating podcast that any process manager could learn from, and indeed anyone in manufacturing. To discover more about how Kahuna Workforce Solutions can help your business, please do visit kahunaworkforce.com. I'd like to thank Shawn for joining us today. Until the next time, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Shawn.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. I appreciate the time and thought it was a great conversation.
Thanks for listening, and tune in soon for another PII podcast. Or visit PIImag.com to subscribe to our bi-monthly magazine or weekly newsletter and read the latest news from the industry.